The failure to act with sufficient ambition to avert the climate catastrophe will be the greatest moral failure of our time.
Making changes takes courage, and if we don't change things, we won't have a future.
I'm an environmentalist. A lot of people don't understand that. I think I know more about the environment than most people.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. Change is coming, whether you like it or not.
Zero Carbon
Easter. Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista Series 2, The Manifesto. I'm Ian Collins. It's that regular Friday appointment, the weekly dose of environmental matters. The Green Agenda stops for no one, and each week we delve into those salient issues. The man in the driving seat, of course, is the entrepreneur Dale Vince, often described as an accidental businessman. He's the owner of Ecotricity, the world's first green energy company, and in his other role, he's chairman of Forest Green Rovers, where a League One position currently beckons. Dale, morning to you. I often get asked, which is the day job?
Good question. I get asked that as well. In fact, somebody asked me yesterday, how much time do I spend on Ecotricity compared to other stuff? And, you know, it actually changes. So one week it might be all about Ecotricity, another week it's all about football. It really depends on what's going on. Right now it's all about Ecotricity and the third or fourth lockdown, I lost count, and that kind of stuff, you know.
I mean, when you're watching Forest Green in action and it's a particularly tasty match and everything is falling into place nicely and a few beauties have been tapped in from your boys, do you never sit there and think, sod the energy stuff?
Oh, I don't have to be sat at football to think that.
It's just laying in a bath.
It's been hard work, actually. Energy, I would say. We've been doing it about 25 years, and a lot has changed along the way. And I think I reached a place where I kind of been there, done that, and kind of lost the T-shirt actually for that. And I would like to do something different. And well, I am doing some different things as well as energy. So my life is moving on a little.
It must be. I mean, it's incredible. We've talked about so many issues where bureaucracy and government legislation and rules and regulations and impenetrable layers of all manner of diktats that come out from government. It must be particularly frustrating if you've got an idea, you've got a theory, you'd like to see something expanded. There's literally no reason on God's earth that anybody would stand in the way. And then you discover a pen pusher somewhere in Whitehall has stood in the way.
I think it's politicians more than bureaucrats that are standing in the way, actually. I mean, on the one hand, I think we've made great progress with these concepts, energy, transport and food. We can see revolutions underway in all of these three big walks of life. But on the other hand, there are people that have stood in the way inexplicably. David Cameron kind of put up barriers to onshore wind and solar, for example. He took away the zero carbon standard for new homes, just killed it.
Why would he do that, though? What's in it for him to do that? Surely there's only an advantage to him to not do that.
Well, I think we might have been talking about this last week. Why wouldn't you go for that progressive vote as a Tory? And he did set out to do that. He promised to run the greenest government ever. He was pictured hugging a husky. I met him at one of our windmills, actually. He didn't hug me, but it was a kind of similar...
because you're not a husky.
Similar affair, I think. And by the time he left office, he was talking about green crap, cutting out the green crap. So, he made a 180-degree about turn on green issues in his short time in government. And I think it was really for internal reasons. About 100 of his MPs wrote him a letter saying, we don't want them windmill things in the countryside, and that had a big impact on him, which is unfortunate.
Throughout the course of this podcast, of course, we talk about other issues that are still related to sort of unfathomable government moments. Let's talk about school meals here, because there was a right old fallout on this one in the week.
I mean, it's like the government must be having Groundhog Day feelings over this, you would imagine. I mean, the fourth U-turn on school dinners in 12 months. And even now, the government's signalling that at the February half term, there won't be free school meals. I mean, what are they thinking? They just want to lose again. Public opinion is so far the other way. I don't understand what the government are doing, honestly. And I think Rashford published a picture of what the parcels, food parcels, look like this week, and that got a lot of attention. And Johnson described them as, I think, unacceptable or disgraceful or something like that, just for Keir Starmer to point out to him that it was government specified. content, 2 potatoes and a loaf of bread and a couple of tubes of yogurt, I think it was. What an incredible mess. And off the back of all of that, putting out the idea that there won't be free school meals in February half term, I think it's just madness. Is another U-turn in the making, obviously.
Oh, it's you can see it about to happen. I mean, it is extraordinary. I appreciate, there's not a bottomless pit of cash for everything, and everyone could make an equally compelling and seductive case. But on something like this, you might have thought one of the aforementioned pen pushers would take the PM to one side and say, look, Boris, on this one, just get back to the vouchers, 30 quid, every parent, every kid under this age, and let's keep it like that for the foreseeable.
Yeah, it would be a common sense thing to do, but I do think it's about priorities and values, and our government values other things. I don't think they see the merit in helping out in cases of food poverty.
What do they value, though, Dale? What is there?
Wealth creation.
What is the? But even the wealth creators are moaning now, so they've even got that wrong.
Well, I mean, they've been chucking incredible sums of money around to support the economy and to support different sectors of business, like pubs and restaurants and stuff like that. Eat Out to Help Out in August, 500 million quid giving people half-price pub dinners, but the kids that can't afford to eat a lunch during school time, the government absolutely resent giving them anything. And I think it's just it's a matter of priorities and values, and this government don't think its job is to help out poor people.
Yeah, I mean, I get the idea that you can have more ways of doing things than just the way one person suggests it. So I understand that. So if they said, look, okay, thank you, Mr. Rashford, and your ideas, it's very powerful. You're a well-respected footballer, you're young, you've got all of those things going on. But don't worry, we've got another way of doing it. It'll achieve the same aim, so panic over. But it's not even that. And, that would be fine if there was this kind of big alternative there. And they always come out with the same line, don't they? That, well, actually, overall, we've spent more money on school meals than any other government. I don't know whether that's true or not, but if people aren't eating properly, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, you're right. I mean, these are, unusual times, aren't they? I think you're right. It's not about how it's done, it's about whether it's done, and the government doesn't think that it should. I mean, one of the classic lines they trotted out over the summer was that it wasn't the school's responsibility to feed kids in the holidays. And it's like, well, nobody's saying that. We're saying it's the government's responsibility. I mean, food is a basic human need, isn't it? And for kids especially, if a kid is in a family that can't afford to feed them, I mean, that's a really important thing. And as a society and as a government, we should do something about that. It should be a priority.
Here's a question from Phil on Facebook who says, congratulations on your geothermal project, Dale. Is it difficult to turn geothermal energy into electricity? We've had a geothermal heating project in Southampton for a quarter of a century.
No, I don't think it's too difficult. It is about heat, actually. You need to get water out at a higher temperature. So for heating, you're probably looking for something around 40 degrees. For making electricity, you need more than that. So that's the challenge, to get deep enough to find the hot enough water. But geothermal is a fabulous concept.
Question from Jamie. Dale, a while back you mentioned you were planning to get involved in a Solway Bay tidal project. Is this going ahead? You better explain what it is first, Dale.
Yeah, it's a tidal lagoon, actually. And we've got a project in Solway Bay. In fact, there's 2 projects there, one on either side of the border, a line that runs down the middle. And what they both are kind of like swimming pools in the sea, if you can imagine that. So imagine a rock wall, let's say, call it a square, built out to sea, probably standing a couple of meters above sea level. And what we do is we impound water when the tide comes in within this rock pool or swimming pool. And when the tide goes out and the water level outside the wall falls sufficiently, then the water is let out from the lagoon through turbines to make electricity. And so it's a form of renewable energy, but it's very different to the wind and sun, which are driven by the weather, which can be variable, of course. We're getting good at predicting it, but still it comes and it goes. Whereas the tides, I mean, they do come and they go, but they're forecastable 100 years ahead or more. So, we know when it's coming, so it makes it a very kind of predictable and to a degree controllable form of energy. So it's a great idea. It needs some government support to build the first ones. And that's what we're waiting for, really, for government to decide whether they want to back it or not.
Here's a story. The planet facing a ghastly future of mass extinction, declining health and climate disruption upheavals that threaten human survival because of ignorance and inaction. And this is according to an international group of scientists who warn that people still haven't grasped the urgency of the biodiversity and climate crisis. This seems to be a kind of common thread. You think, well, lots of people, there's people like yourself, there are scientists, there are campaigners, all manner of people shouting this from the rafters. Who's not listening?
Yeah, good question. I think governments are not listening, definitely, and our government's not listening. We had the 10 Pointless Plan a few weeks ago, which recycled a whole bunch of spending pledges and some pretty empty promises that were really only just keeping pace with the change that's happening anyway, So we've got COP26 this year, though, in Britain. The next big climate conference is being hosted here, and there is an opportunity for Britain to show a bit of leadership and make some changes, and we're going to be doing a bit of campaigning for that. And, let's see if we just can't get the politicians to listen. I did hear the other day, it was last night on a phone call, taking part in something, somebody said to me, the Cabinet Office are focused on energy, transport and food from a policy point of view for COP. And I thought that sounds very interesting. I'm going to follow that up.
Yeah, well, watch this space on that one. Ken emails zerocarbonista@ecotricity.co.uk, says, I'm involved in a house building. I want to generate interest in getting the very, very inefficient building regulations changed. How do we speed this up? I want to stop the construction of crap houses with oversized gas and oil boilers. How and where do we start?
Kind of more like how and where do we pick this up and put it back into progress again, really, because as I mentioned, Cameron did something quite fundamental a few years ago. He ended the Zero Carbon Homes program, and this had been running for many years, and it involved the building industry, and it set out a series of sequential steps to drive new house building down to zero carbon. And it was about to be implemented. Everybody was on board, and for no discernible reason, Cameron ended it a few years ago. So the standard exists, and the housing industry had bought into it and was ready to deliver it. So everything we need, we have. We just got to dust it off and put it back into action.
Here's an interesting story from across the pond. When we speak next week, there will officially be a new president, of course. The other one would have gone. But I spotted this, that the two scientists, controversial scientists, appointed by the Trump administration have been removed from their posts at the White House after publishing papers downplaying the climate crisis with an unapproved use of the presidential seal. So they've cooked up their own plans, lobbed the presidential seal on. Essentially faked up that this came from the... So even Trump didn't agree with them.
Well, I have to say, my first instinct is doesn't really matter, because if they had stuck those papers in front of Trump, he would have signed them, I feel sure.
Well, you'd have thought so, yes, based on everything we know about him. But
that's probably what they thought, isn't it? They probably thought, yeah, look, this is a given, it's anti the climate crisis. The press is going to be on board.
Past the boss. That was not an unreasonable way to look at things.
Yeah, I think so. Nobody should be surprised.
Yeah, are you expecting to change with the Biden administration? I mean, because obviously, a new broom and all the rest of it. A sense that that these people will re-sign up to Paris and various other agreements and get back into the serious business of addressing all the issues we speak about. But they're also not without their critics as well about things not going far enough.
Yeah, but look, he's not in power yet, even. So I kind of slightly deaf to the critical voices. I think give the guy a chance. That there is a massive plan of spending and commitment to renewable energy and climate change, and I think the US is about to resume its leadership role in the world, in all kinds of world affairs, but not least in climate change. And I do think that Europe without Britain is going to be better off and better able to move on a lot of issues like this. And I think that we'll see a competition emerge between Europe and the US in terms of who's got the claim to world leadership on climate issues. I think we'll be flapping around on the margins, claiming to be world beating and all that kind of stuff. And they'll pat us on the head and smile and carry on with the business of grown-ups. But I think Europe and the US are going to really deliver in the coming year. And so
Here's a question from Sal. Dale, I first heard you on Ed Miliband's Reasons to Be Cheerful podcast, and now I'm a convert. Not a question, just thanks. Great to have you speaking about the moral and environmental imperative to end animal farming as well. And what's all this moonlighting onto other podcasts, Dale? I mean,
yeah, my
Ed
bad.
Miliband as well.
Yeah, my bad. Well, no, it was really fun, actually. I mean, I've known Ed for a little while, since he was leader of the party a few years ago, and he's a great guy. He gets
It's very funny, isn't he? That's the thing that people don't realise about Ed Miliband.
He's funny, yeah, he is funny. I've the funniest Christmas card I've ever had is one he sent me. It's a picture of himself sat on a Harley eating a bacon sandwich.
Brilliant.
Just a bit of self-deprecating humour.
Yeah, I mean, the self-deprecating stuff over the bacon sandwich, he never tires of, and it's always frankly amusing. So good on him. But Sal, I'm assuming, is now a convert to this podcast from that podcast, which is good. So we thank Ed Miliband. We're stealing his listeners.
Yeah, definitely. And look, I mean, Ed gets the whole green economy, green industrial revolution thing. So, I mean, he's a great person to have in the Labour Party on the front bench for that. So I've got big hopes, actually, for policy that will emerge from the Labour Party. I think later this year, probably ahead of COP. I think we're bound to see some. And, maybe we can just shift our focus away from the pandemic and silly little issues. I say silly little issues, but I mean the clumsy treatment of important issues, such as school dinners, and get on with something, more meaningful and useful.
Yeah, that actually changes things. B on Twitter, final one, Dale. How's the electric hovercraft coming on? My son wants a go. We've talked about this before. What's the deal here? Are you building one?
Yeah, we are. We are building an electric hovercraft. It's going to be, it looks like a coastal version, so big enough to carry like 2 or 3 people or a bunch of stuff. We're hoping to put it into use with Sea Shepherd for some marine patrol work. And we just had the idea a few weeks ago, or a couple of months probably now, to electrify a hovercraft, because I think that would be really cool. For one thing, they'd be a lot quieter than the hovercraft are. But of course, it takes another internal combustion engine use case out of contention. And we're also building the Iron Horse at the same time. So the two projects have merged. We're kind of looking at similar powertrain and battery pack setups for both of those. And we're actually exploring a new tech, which is very exciting, which is supercapacitors instead of batteries.
Wow.
They seem to have an enormous amount to offer, and the tech has really moved on in the last couple of years. And the people we're talking to think that they can make supercapacitors that can compete with lithium-ion batteries for energy density.
If you're going to be doing any of this testing across the channel, you better be careful, because you might bump into Farage with his big net.
Yes.
He might think you're illegal or something, and he'll do something about it.
Yeah, he might. I don't know what to say, honestly. But I guess we have to be careful if we even drive into Kent, don't we? We need a pass for that, a Kermit pass, don't we?
You've got to have everything now. It's like Kent is
another country.
It's another planet, frankly. That should never be forgotten. Dale will speak in a week. A new chapter in 2021 in a week's time.
Looking forward to it.
That's it for this episode. Don't forget, of course, subscribe for free from your podcast provider so that you get each new episode automatically. Do leave a review there as well. If you want to get in touch, you can email your comments and questions, zerocarbonista@ecotricity.co.uk. Really important bit, this. Do make sure you follow Dale on social media. That's twitter.com/DaleVince and facebook.com/DaleVince.
Zero Carbon
East of